Hello everybody, we're behind the scenes at the British Museum. I'm Julia Farley, I'm a curator here at the British Museum, and this is Fraser Hunter.
From National Museum in Edinburgh.
And we're here today to do something really special, which we are very, very excited about, and that is to launch joint partnership exhibitions, which are called Celts. And so the Celts exhibition at the British Museum, which is Celts Art and Identity, tickets are on sale now, which I've been waiting to say for years. And the show opens on the 24th of September, and we really, really hope that you will come down and see it. We're going to be showing you some of the exciting objects which are going to be in the show in just a moment. The show then travels up to Edinburgh after it closes at the British Museum on the 31st of January.
So if you can't come to London, come to Edinburgh from the 10th of March through to the end of September next year. It'll be the place to be. Everything you'd ever want to know about Celts will be in our museum.
Ideally, obviously, we hope that people will want to come and see both exhibitions because they'll be so excited by the
You'll
first
need
one.
to. I think to understand that you'll need, and come to each exhibition several times, definitely.
Yeah, so now's the time to get booking for the British Museum show and to start booking your flights to travel up to Edinburgh to see that one too. Shall we start by showing these guys some treasure?
Bling.
This is really, really exciting for us because we have together, side by side, for the first time, two star objects from the British Museum's own collection. One from the British Museum's collection, which is this, the Snettersham Great Torc, and one from the National Museum of Scotland's collection, this torc from Blair Drummond. So we've got a little plinth up here where maybe we can lift them up to show them to you.
We should have a risky drum roll at this point.
Thanks, Fraser. Vote of confidence. So, we're going to start with Snettersham. I'll turn him around. This is one of my favourite objects from the collection. I always feel a little bit guilty saying that because it seems like admitting that you have favourite children. But this object was found as part of a number of enormous hoards of Iron Age gold jewellery and silver jewellery and all kinds of exciting things, which were found at Snettersham in Norfolk. This one was found in the 1950s. And there's even a story about it being worn by King George just after it was discovered, although we don't know if that's true. It is an absolutely incredible object, and I hope that you can get a bit of a sense of that from looking at it on your screen. It has this incredible decoration all over the terminals, which so these are cast on to the wires that you see around here. But you'll have seen me trying not to shake as I'm picking it up and carrying it over here. And that's because although it looks like this really heavy, solid object, and it is heavy, actually it's surprisingly springy, because what all these coils are coils of wires that would have been wrapped around an organic core and have been turned into shape. So it's 8 bunches of 8 wires, so 64 altogether, and these fabulous decorated terminals, cast on and then decorated to really bring out the definition and the decoration here. We think that possibly the person who wore it was right-handed, and we know that it has been worn, because you will see I have this terminal propped up on a little block there because we don't want it to wobble, and that's because in order to put something like this on, you would have lifted one terminal up and the other terminal down and then slipped it onto your neck in a kind of corkscrew motion. And like that. It's quite difficult to do without a talk. That's how I imagine it would work. I should say that if you guys want to ask us any questions, we've just been chatting to some journalists outside, so do fire your questions over, and we've got lots of friends here who are going to be shouting them out to us, and we can try and answer them for you as best we can. And this talk, it shows a bit of evidence of wear underneath as well, so we know it was worn by somebody, and there are some examples from the same hoard that even show wear so much they've really broken at the back. So this is the talk from our collection.
It's all very well, Julia. It's a bit big and a bit gaudy for my taste. See, what you really need is something more subtle and understated, and for that, you need the torc from our collection. And this equally wobbly example is another torc with a story. I hate handling this when someone's got a camera on me, because you can see just how wobbly it is. Now, you'll see immediately the contrast with what Julia was just showing you. It's the same basic idea. The idea of a torc is the same. You have this rope-like terminal and the rope-like hoop and the ring terminals, but the way this one is decorated is totally different. So it's the Iron Age idea of a torc, found all across Europe at this time, but the way it's decorated is done by somebody who's trained in the Mediterranean, because these styles of doing things, the wire work, the little gold balls, the chain. These are things you find on Greek or Etruscan or Roman jewellery. You don't get this in the Iron Age. So whoever's done this has been somebody trained in the Med, somebody who knows how to do these things. This torc is part of a hoard found in the centre of Scotland at Blair Drummond. How did it get there? And this is one of these great puzzles of something like that. We still don't know. But it shows the connections and the contacts all across Iron Age Europe, which is one of the main things we're trying to show in this exhibition. An exhibition which is, as we said before, in the British Museum from September the 24th. And then, ignoring that, come to Edinburgh, March to September next year. Now this is another hoard with a story, because many of these finds actually have great backstories. Snettisham turns up during ploughing. This one is a metal detectorist discovery on his first day out, which is quite a remarkable find. Parks his car, turns the machine on, walks 7 steps and gets earache as his machine goes crazy. And this is him finding the best hoard of Iron Age gold from Scotland for well over a century. Not just this torc, but 3 other ones. 2 of them local, one of them a French style, again showing this contacts and connectedness. And because he reported it so fast, we were able to go and excavate and discover loads about the setting of this thing. Because these things aren't just beautiful bits of bling, they're buried deliberately. So this particular one is buried inside a wooden building, which is probably some kind of shrine. Similar stories from Snettisham as well, where there's excavation evidence too, which perhaps Julia can tell us about.
Yeah, the finds from Snettisham came up over a really long period of time. The first, the Great Torc which I showed you is one of the first. The very first ones which were found, which are coming to both exhibitions to be shown alongside the other material from Snettisham for one of the first times, which is wonderful, are these fabulous kind of tubular torcs beaten out of gold sheet. And they were actually, they were found by a farmer who was ploughing in his field, and he thought at first they were part of a brass bedstead, so he discarded them by the side of the field. But thankfully, they were recovered. Someone recognised them and thought, that's something a bit interesting. And actually, they're these fabulous Iron Age, probably about 1st century BC, gold torcs that are now in the collections of Norwich Castle, but they're one of the loans that we're really excited to be welcoming to the show. And the others were found later in the 1950s. But then the site went a bit quiet, and people weren't recovering a huge amount of material from there. But there were a group of metal detectorists who were absolutely sure that there must be more to be found. And working together with Ian Stead, who at the time was the Iron Age curator at the British Museum, they went back and did a survey of the field, which is now known as the Gold Field, for reasons that will be obvious. And they found a whole series of hoards. It's an absolutely incredible site. And so it's for us a really, really exciting moment to be able to be bringing that material together in our exhibitions, because it's now divided between the collections at Norwich Castle and the excavations from the 1990s, which are in the British Museum collections. So being able to bring that together and tell the whole story of that site is wonderful. Some were small hoards, like the Great Torc, which was found just with a few other objects kind of tangled up together in a pit. But others were huge hoards, like Hoard L, which was found on the last day of one of their excavations. They got to the bottom of a pit. They'd found a couple of silver torcs in it. It was quite nice, and they were just cleaning up at the bottom. They thought it's worth getting the metal detectorists in just to have a little look, put the metal detector down, and again, beep, 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 something very exciting is happening. And finding this on your first day of excavation as an archaeologist, I might ask whether they can tweet a picture later or something, but that pit, when they peeled it back, those layers of soil, and found staring out at them this huge pile of gold, is just the most incredible excavation photo I have ever seen. And every time I look at it, it gives me goosebumps, because I know that I will never find anything quite like that.
Happens all the time.
Just to get on to the next piece.
Yes.
There are a few questions about
wonderful.
Weight. How much do they both weigh?
The Snettisham Great Torc clocks in weighing you down at just over a kilo.
Whereas this dainty little beast here is only about 200 grams, much more, say, subtle and discreet.
Value, of course, it's their gold. Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, we don't think of them as having kind of financial value, because for us they're priceless, but they obviously are hugely valuable objects, because bullion value alone would be enormous.
Well, the value of this thing at the time, of course, would have been the connections it showed. If you were wearing this, folk would know you had contacts and you had connections. And that's one of the great things about these objects. They would have told stories in the past as well. Somebody would have looked at this thing and clocked that person's link. That person can get hold of the material, can get hold of the craft workers to make this kind of stuff, knows where the contacts and connections are. And this idea of links and connections for us is a key thing for the exhibition. Celts is a really woolly, really difficult word. It means all kinds of things to all kinds of people. And it's some of those meanings we want to tease apart in this show. Things like these torcs are a great example. Same idea, two totally different ways of doing it. And that's typical of what's happening in the Iron Age and the early medieval periods. Shared ideas, different ways of doing things. We call them all Celtic. That tends to jumble together things that are really quite different.
One last question about the talks is, why would they have been put in the ground?
We think certainly about Snettisham. I'll let Fraser answer for his own. But quite often when you find these things, they have been clearly deliberately buried. This is definitely not something that has been lost and has slipped away. And at Snettisham we have a whole range of different things. And they are showing lots of different connections. So we've got objects that might be imported, like those tubular torcs I was talking about that might have been, well, someone thought they were part of a brass bedstead, but they weren't. Those are probably imports from across the channel. And we have that combined with local objects as well, which is in some ways a bit of a similar story, I think, to what we're seeing in the Blair Drummond hoard. So for us, when you look at these collections of material that have been amassed together, some buried complete, some buried broken up, it's obviously not an accident, and the way that this is being focused at particular sites seems to me to be suggesting that they're gifts to the gods, or it's some kind of a ritual centre, a special place that people are travelling to from over a very, very large area. I don't think they were coming back to get this stuff, but of course we can't rule that out completely. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, I would say for us as archaeologists, the excitement of these things isn't just the bling, it's not just the objects, it's the stories they can tell. And going to excavate around about find spots is really important because you learn things you can't just learn from the object. So because we were able to excavate this find spot, we can say it's sitting in this isolated bit of landscape, it's sitting inside a timber building. This isn't a house, nobody's living there. It's some kind of shrine or temple where offerings are being made. You don't just lose these things, as Julia said. It's not an accident. So with much of this stuff, it is clearly deliberately buried. When you come to the show in London from September, in Edinburgh from March, count how much of this stuff comes from rivers or from lochs or these kind of places. Because many of these things are put into places you could never get them back from. They're sacrifices. These are being deliberately put in the ground as sacrifices to some unknown gods or for some reasons to do with marking, say, somebody's death or something like that.
Speaking of things which were found in interesting places like bogs.
Where'd that come from? You could have warned me. The third person in this interview. Yeah. This is the Desford Carnix. This isn't strictly speaking the real Desford Carnix. This is a reconstruction. What is a Carnix and where is Desford? Desford is in the northeast of Scotland, near the town of Cullen, between Banff and Elgin. A Carnix is an animal-headed horn, often used in battle. We only have the head surviving, but by the miracles of modern archaeology, and thanks to some very good metal workers, we've been able to reconstruct what it would have looked like. It is a terrifying instrument, as I'm now about to demonstrate.
It is actually genuinely quite scary, can I just say? Genuinely actually quite terrifying.
And it comes with its own, it's a brass instrument, you can toot it and make noises. It comes with its own percussion section as well. The head end, when it was discovered in the early 19th century, it said it had a wooden tongue movable with springs. So we've reconstructed this drum beat, which we have here, and we know from the original object the lower jaw moves. So when you play it, not only does it toot like a trumpet, but you also get the rattle of the tongue and the rattle of the jaw.
So when you're actually playing that, because what gets me is when you see pictures of these things being played, how high above someone is that? Because that is huge. It's terrifying enough when it's close to you, but if people were walking towards you in a kind of war situation, having things looming over you at that kind of height, I'm genuinely intimidated.
This also makes the sound carry. If you have that up there, it really makes the sound carry.
Can you show us what it sounds like?
I can try. Normally I only have noise by dropping it and it clanks. I'm not a musician, but I shall try.
Catch it.
I would be knackered if I was a Carnix player. But you can see the power of the instrument. And you imagine in a quiet landscape the noise that this kind of thing makes. And this is one of them. You imagine 3 of them, 6 of them, a dozen of them, the racket something like this makes in a war situation or in a ceremony. It's like bagpipes. This is the Iron Age version of bagpipes. It'll inspire your friends and scare the bejesus out of your enemies.
Yeah.
A very effective beast. Very effective beast.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. So something else that we can talk about. So we've been so far showing you objects that are going to be in the 2 exhibitions. Firstly, opening, tickets on sale now on the 24th of September at the British Museum, and then travelling up to Edinburgh and opening on the 10th of March next year. But we also have 2 other objects to show you, which aren't going to be in our exhibitions because they have other appointments around the country. They are going to be travelling to various different venues in England, going to Newark Museum and also to Littlehampton Museum, and then travelling up to...
Coming to Scotland, and they're going to Inverness and to Dundee and to Galashiels.
And what they are, again, is a lovely pair of objects, one from the British Museum collections and one from National Museum of Scotland, and they are 2 very, very fabulous Iron Age mirrors. So, is it helpful? Should we move them up? Yeah. So, should I do... Why do you take one each?
Do you have the ping pong ball for the...
We could get it set up. We've got the table ready. So this lovely creature is the Holcomb mirror. And I'm actually just going to show it to you the other way up quickly. I know someone is going to be very angry at me for doing this. So if you have a look at this bit, which is at the base of the handle, it looks a little bit like the face of a slightly scary cat with 2 ears and 2 eyes. And we know that in these eyes there would have been little bits of coral or enamel which was set into there, because if I turn this over, we have one still in place on the other side. So you can see that this would have been a really striking object. You have to imagine when it's new that it is absolutely gleaming bronze. Mirrors are very unusual objects in the Iron Age. So this one was made probably between 50 BC and AD 50. And the way that people are able to use these metal objects as mirrors, which is a bit confusing for us, I think, because we think of mirrors as being made of glass, but is that they have one side very, very highly polished in this bronze, which would enable you to see a probably slightly distorted, but a vision of your own reflection. And if you think about what images meant to people, those kinds of things, at a time when generally you could only see your reflection in water, and you don't have TV and these enormous adverts and things, that very idea of images, of something which can show you this kind of inverted picture of yourself or something that you're looking at behind you, is probably actually quite magical and quite special. And these are clearly very, very special objects, because not only do we get this kind of decoration on them, like the fabulous enigmatic cat face, but also, if I very carefully turn this over, this is where we want to have him the right way up. This is the handle by which you'd be holding it here. And if someone was gazing into their mirror and you were standing looking at them, what you would see is this decorated backplate. This type of object is almost exclusively found in the British Isles, and this type of decoration is very, very closely associated with these mirrors as well, so much so that archaeologists have actually called it the mirror style. And what it is it's made up of these fabulous interlocking shapes. So if I show you on here, we've got a kind of lyre loop pattern coming around here, and within all of that are these wonderful little decorative shapes and motifs. And this was probably made about between 50 BC and AD 50. So this is probably something that predates the Roman invasion of Britain. And it's the kind of art that people are making in southern Britain at that kind of pre-conquest time. And it shows some of the new interests that people have, the new art styles they're using, and also the way that they are using new kinds of objects to do things to their appearance. We get a lot of kind of new sorts of personal grooming products and things appearing at this time as well. The other mirror that we have is a little bit later. going to let Fraser bring that up and have a talk about it.
Yeah, you'll see it's the same idea, but done rather differently. This one doesn't have any decoration on the plates, so I can show you that side, and it's blank. I can turn it over, and that's also blank. We don't have the engraving on this one. This is probably slightly... Never ask an archaeologist for a date, because we'll always equivocate, but most likely late 1st, early 2nd century AD. Now, it's probably later than the one Julia showed you, and we can tell this by tedious archaeological means of comparison, because this thing here, the style of that, is very, very similar to Roman bronze vessels. Roman bronze vessels don't get to Scotland until the late 1st century AD, so the model for this is arriving in the 70s, 80s AD. So I would say between about 70 and 150, something like that. And that AD, and that fits the decoration here, this style of decoration, very different from what you have on the engraved mirror. This is done by taking a plate of bronze and hammering up the decoration from behind, and then punching in that from behind, and then with a very fine chisel, hammering in details like these lines from the front. A really beautiful piece of work. And in this case, you've got a banding around the edge of it. Found in a hoard, again most likely some kind of religious offering, in a bog near Balmaclellan in southwestern Scotland. And the mirror wasn't alone, it was found with a whole series of other decorated objects. We don't know what they're from, though. It could be from furniture or a box or something like that. It's one of these puzzles that archaeology so often leaves us with. This mirror has never been shown alongside a decorated mirror like that before. So this partnership project is a fantastic chance to take these two objects, put them together, and then take them all across Britain to let people see them right across the country. So you can not only come to the British Museum from September to come to the Celts exhibition, and come to Edinburgh in March 2016 for our Celts exhibition, you can also go to these 5 venues across Britain to come and look at the mirrors.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that we've shown you some really exciting objects and give you a little bit of a taster of what you can see not only at some of our partner museums across the UK, but also at the 2 exhibitions that, as Fraser says, we're opening first at the British Museum on the 24th of September. Tickets on sale now. Please, please come along. We're really excited to be able to show you all of the objects that we're bringing together for the first time. And then travelling up to Edinburgh to open on the 10th of March next year. And it's a really exciting partnership between the 2 museums that's been absolutely brilliant to work on, and we hope that's going to come across when you get to see all of these fabulous objects and what they can do, as Fraser's shown us with the wonderful carnix.
Yeah, come and see us, and more importantly, come and see these and many other things like them, stuff you've never seen before.